Today's video is going to talk about task decomposition. This is one component of agent engineering. In fact, this is part 9 of a 14-part series. When we create a custom agent, the primary component of that is a Task Markdown file. And recall that a Task Markdown file has 5 components: the role, the task, the steps, the analysis, and the examples. Today we're going to focus on the task. One must concisely and precisely define exactly what we are asking the AI agent to do. And note that every task and subtask is named and defined carefully. So, task decomposition is the process of breaking a complex task into smaller, organized steps to make it easier to manage. Rather than giving an AI a broad and undefined request, this approach guides it through clear and logical steps. Decomposing tasks helps simplify complicated problems, making them more approachable and easier to solve accurately. It also improves the relevance and quality of the results by allowing for more error checking at each stage of the process. Overall, task decomposition supports more structured output and makes it easier to monitor progress from start to finish. So, how does task decomposition work? Well, we're going to start with the main task and then identify subtasks and then sub-subtasks and so on. Let's say, for an example, I want to create a custom agent to fact check. Well, let's see here. What are going to be the subtasks involved in that? Well, I'm going to have the fact itself that I want to verify, and then a report on that. So what's the report going to consist of? Well, a source list and a report summary of all the different sources. Now let's take a look at that source list. That's going to consist of a collection of source, and each source itself will have a source name, a source summary, and a source link. And here's an example of task decomposition. Let's do a live demo here. We like to create the task section of a Task Markdown file, which will assist in the process of summarizing an article, a chapter, or a web page. So let's start at step 0, the role. First of all, we want to create a file called summarizer.markdown. Take a moment here and fill out the role section. Specifically, what job title or something similar of one who is good at this task, and then describe the attributes of this individual. Now, pause the video for a second, try this yourself, and then I'll do a live demo. Okay, my first step is to create a Markdown file. So I'm going to say new, and then I'm just going to save it immediately, and I'm going to save this as summarizer.markdown. And don't forget to select the file type as Markdown. All right, now it's summarizer.markdown. And when I'm in a Markdown file, then I can hit this really cool little preview icon on the right here to give me an idea of what my Markdown file looks like in a more human readable way. Okay, so now I'm going to create the role. So this is heading 1, which is $1. Okay, so my role section is, you are an avid reader. That's a job title or description of a person who does this. Now, what are the attributes? Now, everyone's going to be different here, but this is what I want out of my summarizer. You enjoy consuming large amounts of text and getting to the heart of what it describes. That's the key point there. You love details and nuance. You find it particularly rewarding to find connections between seemingly unrelated facts. Okay, now that we have the role section filled out, now we like to describe what success looks like. What a perfect result would look like for our agent. Now, we are not creating an example of the perfect result. That will come later in the examples section of the Task Markdown file. Instead, we want to know the elements or the components of this solution. Specifically, one way of thinking this is to describe the sections or parts of a report. Now, once again, pause this video, try this yourself, and then you'll see my solution. Okay, so here's my solution. We'll start with a paragraph-wide summary. I like to know broadly about this particular article that I'm trying to summarize. Next, we'll list the key facts, including a summary of the fact and a quote from the source itself. And then finally, I'll finish with links to further reading, including the name of the link, the summary, and the link itself. This is what I would find useful personally for my summarizer. Of course, your results will be different. Okay, so now that we have the goal defined, the next step is to create an outline. On a sheet of paper or a whiteboard, draw a tree of the components or subtasks involved in creating this report. Once again, pause the video and then I'll share with you my solution. Okay, so with my solution, I'm going to start with my summarizer. That's my main task. And I'm going to think about this for a second here. And that's right, I wanted to have an abstract, I want to have the key points, and I want to have the further reading. Now remember, the key points themselves, they're going to have subcomponents as well. I'm going to have the fact itself that is part of the reading, and then the quote directly from the article. Now, for the further reading bit, what do I want from that? I'm going to want to have the name of the article, a link to the article, and then a brief summary of the article itself. Now, this is my task decomposition. Yours may be different. Okay, so now that we have the outline for our task decomposition, the next step is to define the very first task. So we're going to start with the topmost item, the summarizer task itself, and I want to define it with a couple sentences. All right, pause the video here, try this yourself, and then we'll take a look at my solution. Okay, let's take a look at my solution. Okay, so our task section, once again, heading 1. Your task is to create the summary of an article, a web page, or a document. This includes 3 parts: the abstract, the key points, and a further reading. Now observe that abstract, key points, and further reading are marked as bold with the asterisks on either side, indicating I'm going to define them later as well. Okay, so now that I have the topmost task defined, the next step is to define the subtasks. I want to work through the tree from top to bottom, defining each subtask one at a time. Remember, I'm starting with my summarizer, which I already did, then my abstract and key points and my further reading, and then my facts and quote and name and link and summary. Okay, pause the video, try this yourself, and then take a look at my solution. Okay, so the abstract is a 1 to 2 paragraph summary of the article, web page, or document representing the main points or themes of the article in a human understandable way. Specifically, I would like the abstract to be concise and focused. The key points is a collection of points, each of which contains a fact and a quote. And the goal here is to represent 5 to 10 of the most important or significant facts in the article, document, or web page. Sort the key points according to relevance, importance, and significance, with the most important points on top. A fact is a data point, statistic, or truth, or any other point which is described in the article. A quote is a direct quote from the article, web page, or document which supports or describes the fact. Further reading, the further reading list is a collection of sources which tell us more about the key points of the article. Each source consists of a name, link, and a summary. The name, the first part of the source, is the name, and this is the title of the source. Note that if the title is longer than 5 words, then just present the first 5 words and leave the rest out with an ellipse. The summary, the second part of the source, is the summary, a 1 to 2 sentence abstract of the source. This is similar to the abstract defined previously, except shorter. And link, the third and final part of the source, is the link. Here we want a hyperlink to the source so I can click on it and read it myself. Now observe that when I wrote this, I have many typos, so go back and fix them, and then we'll move on. Okay, at this point in time, we believe we're done. We have our role, and we have our task section complete. The question is, how does it do? Now, we can actually run the Task Markdown file by itself, just with our role and task, and it will probably do a fairly good job. Now, as an exercise on your own, I encourage you to fill out the steps, the analysis, and the examples. We'll present further videos to describe each of these steps in more detail.